On the internet, things are often not what they seem.
Cybercrime has surpassed drug trafficking as the #1 crime in the world. It is worth over $1 trillion a year, and sextortion is a significant part of that.
People are being duped, encouraged to expose themselves, and then blackmailed.
I thought, geez, what is my life worth? Do I just end everything? It kind of felt as if everything you've worked towards and everything you've set up is just disappearing.
International organised criminal gangs are behind the scam, and it's more common than we may realise.
And you could probably equate it to someone being a victim of a sexual offence.
There is huge psychological distress for victims.
An underreported crime, it's impossible to know just how many people have been the victims of sextortion. Men are shamed and embarrassed and often end up paying criminals to keep a lid on things. Tonight we meet victims. One would only speak to us on the condition that we didn't reveal his identity. He explains how a random Facebook friend request led to messages from a sextortion gang, which he says destroyed his life.
She told me that she worked in a hospital in Dublin. I checked the name in the hospital, and the name did come up that there was somebody by that name who worked there, so it was guaranteed to be safe. She said she liked me, that she liked my profile, liked my picture. Over a period of time, the message led to her saying she wanted to do stuff to me, and me saying the same to her. I was attracted to her sexually. So at the end of the day, I was single, so I didn't think it was doing anything wrong. So she started to undress. She showed a lot of herself, so I ended up showing my private part to her. And when she's seen it, the connection went dead. And then within 5 seconds, my social media went wallop. It was just like they were ready for me. They had a lot of information to hit me with. They sent me a list of all my friends, saying they would share this video. They wanted money up front and wanted it straight away.
Like many others, this victim paid up and continued to do so for months.
They kept looking for money and money and money, and they never stopped. You're talking over a period of about 6 months, they would have hit me with about maybe over 3,000 emails. In total, I gave them in the region of 12 to 15,000 euros over about 16 months. It did destroy me, it did. I'm not sleeping. I wake up every hour and I'm afraid to look at my phone. Suicide was in my head, and it got so far that at one time I was ready to go. And I don't know what changed my mind. I thought to myself, I'm going to have to face this and not end my life over these bastards.
Even though he had handed over thousands, several times when he was late with payments, the gang did publish his video online anyway. Eventually, he stopped paying and reported what had happened to Gardaí. The victims of this crime are not what you might expect. Yes, they are mostly men, and from the privacy of their own homes in towns and villages all over the country, they have been duped. But as we live our lives more online, younger people living in cities all over the world are vulnerable too. We've come to London to meet an Irishman whose life was turned upside down by sextortion. For him, a single man, his visit to an online dating website turned sour very quickly. Carl O'Reilly is young and outgoing, not quite the stereotypical target of sextortion gangs.
So you're on this site, an attractive girl kind of messages you and says she's just looking for a bit of fun. You know, she's happy to chat or whatever, but ultimately she wants to sleep with you. And you're kind of drawn in by it. Obviously, an attractive girl asks you that. And then she brought it to the video to, you know, just find out more about me. And because sex was brought up, she obviously wanted to see my private parts. I suppose I exposed myself to her on camera just for a little bit. And then when it came back to my face, the video just ended.
Like other victims we've spoken to, as soon as the video chat happened, the tide of flirtation turned.
Maybe around 5 minutes later, I got a WhatsApp message, and it was a list of all my friends' family, showing profile pictures on Facebook of them and saying, and including my video as well, and saying, okay, these are all going to be sent to everybody, unless you do what I ask you to do. And I'll be honest, my heart just sank. It was terrifying. I've never experienced anything like it. Your world, just stops. And my initial reaction was, I have to leave my job. My second reaction was, I'll have to leave London. I'll have to leave people I know and set up a new life somewhere else. And then briefly I thought, geez, what is my life worth? Do I just end everything? It kind of felt as if everything you've worked towards and everything you've set up is just disappearing.
The scam is quite simple. Lure someone, convince them to undress and perform a sexual act on camera, and then record the footage and blackmail them.
I paid them, it was £350, which I know on the scale of things isn't huge, and if they'd asked for more, I don't know if I would have been able to afford it. So I paid that, and then it went silent for around 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And I was kind of hoping, I was still shaking, I was still nervous, knowing what had gone on, knowing that, they still had this video. Then 2.5 hours later, I got another message saying, just one more favour, and then we'll delete everything. And they're asking for the same amount of money. And you kind of start seeing the dynamic of it, that this is never going to end. It's, they have control of you.
This panic ensues, this gut-wrenching panic within somebody, and they're saying, look, what can I do? Is there anything I can do? And they will pay anything to make this go away. But unfortunately, there is no magic bullet. Now, there are certain things you can do to stop it getting worse. And there's certain things we can do to mitigate the risks, such as, suggesting that they go dark, they don't pay the ransom. By going dark, I mean that they come off all social media, all internet things. And also my own advice would be, not professional advice, if you like, that I would give to these people just as one human to another, is tell your wife, tell whoever they're holding this over, because this is going to come out. And in the majority of cases, we find that even when the ransom is paid, as I say, this information gets leaked anyway.
Lots of relationships use sexting and video and Skyping, particularly when they're long distance, to help keep the relationship going. So these people don't view the scammer as just a random person online. This is someone who's groomed them to think that they're in a relationship. So they don't think they're sharing something with someone who's going to share it with everyone else. They think they're sharing these images with their life partner, who they just haven't had a chance to meet yet.
More and more of our lives are lived in cyberspace. Even on the street, you can talk to or connect with someone online. But who knows who they are, where they are, or more crucially, if they are? Because very often, victims of sextortion are snared by automated systems or bots, and they operate in an unpoliced and unregulated space. The lack of reporting is part of the problem, gauging just how prevalent this issue is. One website, Scam Survivors, which works to help victims, has told Prime Time they could receive as many as 15 emails from Irish victims in a given week. Internationally renowned cybersecurity experts like Paul Dwyer put the number at hundreds every year.
It's quite common. I think that if the amount of cases that get reported to law enforcement in Garda Síochána, for example, is quite low, but our own experience is that it comes in waves, and we've had cases where we might get 10 or 12 phone calls a month. Sometimes you can actually be dealing with artificial intelligence. They can set up a program that will bait you, send out emails to you, try and engage you in a conversation, and you won't even realise that you're not talking to a human being.
Shame and secrecy are the scammers' best friends. They discourage victims from seeking help.
What makes it easier for criminals to do this kind of thing now, and I suppose it applies to grooming as well, and it's a form of grooming, this is only, we're talking about grooming of adults here, is it's easy to do it because you're anonymous. It's easy to do it because you have access to people who are willing to communicate and like to communicate over the internet. If you're a good con man, it's easy to con them into doing what you want them to do.
They will target various areas geographically. So, for example, in August was a highlight of times that we find in Ireland that sextortion is carried out. For no apparent reason, they will pinpoint people who have been in the media, for example, and might be getting a high profile. But really what they're looking for is anybody that think they can make pay. This is about money and nothing else.
These gangs work globally. This footage, captured by Interpol in the Philippines, shows just how organised they are. Call centre type offices house dozens of scammers as they harvest information, target people, blackmail and extort them.
You've also got small and large industries at quite big scale, particularly in Russia, Ghana and Nigeria. And in the larger scale industries, they've got division of labour. You know, there's certain people who go and find images to create profiles and write the profiles. There's certain people who are the ones who communicate regularly with the victims. There's others who manage the money. There's ones who reach out and find new people to work for them. They work shift work. They do 6 or 8 hours a day. So it's quite organised.
The gangs are unscrupulous and hell-bent on making money, often with life-destroying consequences, as in the case of Tyrone teenager Ronan Hughes.
I'm reminded of the words of the Romanian cyber criminal where he said there's a price to pay for foolishness, and that was one of the last words he said to that child before that child took his own life.
The parish priest, Father Benny Fee, told his family, school friends and his teammates from the O'Rahilly's GAA club that Ronan had been exploited on social media by wicked, faceless individuals who had taken advantage of his youth and beauty.
The tragic death of Ronan Hughes was headline news, but there are many people who have suffered and continue to suffer in silence.
We all like to think we wouldn't fall for it, but we all fall for various things, and scammers are extremely good. They know what psychologically works in order to get people to do this. So they groom people in the same way that children get groomed to engage in behaviour with adults. We're more likely to say and do things online that we wouldn't do offline. You're more likely to become intimate quite quickly, and it's called the hyper-personal communication. And it means that people can get intimate very quickly, can get very intense quite quickly, and it can be even more emotional and intense than offline communication. And so between those two things, being more disinhibited and very intimate, very intense communication, it leads people to do things that rationally they might think they wouldn't have done if they thought about it beforehand.
We understand that people are experiencing a lot of pain and sensitivity in relation to what is just happening to them. And they may feel very embarrassed and don't want to come forward, and would sometimes rather pay these people because that's what it's all about. These people are looking for money. But if you pay them, they may come looking for more money. A lot of people will be afraid that they're going to be judged because of what happened to them, because it's so private, so sensitive. And Gardaí aren't going to judge. We're going to investigate the crime that's reported to us, and we're going to do it in confidence, and we like people to trust us to do that.
As long as victims of this crime deal with it in secret, the true scale of the issue will remain unknown. Carl says seeking help and speaking out has allowed him regain control of his life.
It's a lot of pressure to go through having experienced something like that, but still being terrified of people finding out about it, that you're nearly going out trying to pretend that didn't happen or convince yourself. When I started researching this, I couldn't find anybody who would open up about it. I wanted to find a story of somebody who had spoken about this and come through it okay. And that would have made me feel good, and I just couldn't find it. The fact I spoke about it, the fact I'm doing this, people know it happened, and it takes a lot of pressure off. By talking about it, you're actually taking back control of your situation.